What is it?
It's a horse they found wandering about in no man's land.
What kind of an horse?
A miraculous kind of an horse, be my guess.
Go ahead.
Welcome to What's the Flick, everybody. Ben Mankiewicz, Alonso Duralde, Christy Lemire, Matt Atchity. 4 movies we're doing today, and we will begin with a movie that I have not seen. I was excited to see, but I think less so after hearing what you people have to say about it.
Are you sure?
War Horse. Who's talking about War Horse?
I'm going to talk about War Horse. This is about a mystical, magical horse that comes into a struggling British farming family's life right before World War I. He's remarkable. Are you aware that he's remarkable? Because he really is. You're going to find out just how much so in this clip and more.
England is at war! We are at war!
I promise you that I'll look after him, and if I can, I'll return him to your care.
He's my horse, sir.
Can you imagine flying over a war? And you know you can never look down. You have to look forward, or you'll never get home.
It is an honor to ride beside you. Let every man make himself and his country proud. Be brave. Be brave. Be brave.
If I can quote All About Eve, what a story. Everything but the bloodhounds nipping at a rear end.
Yeah, go ahead.
You guys, obviously, but you guys are less sappy than I am, in general.
I'm not sappy at all.
I'm constantly moved. That seems to, now, if I were just a regular person, and I am not, that looks so awesome to me.
It is very rousing and heart-stirring. It's very old-fashioned. It's very much like an homage to traditional kind of heart-rending wartime storytelling. It's beautiful.
See,
it's all that mystical Spielbergian
I would say
lighting.
Homage. That's
homage, if you will.
I'm just a regular person.
As you are. No, but it's really, really beautiful. I mean, production value-wise, you cannot go wrong. All that Janusz Kaminski and Spielbergian light and the big sweeping score. It's enormously sappy and hokey and heavy-handed.
And when Spielberg does this kind of thing right, I'm the first to be a sucker for it. I cry at E.T., I cry at The Color Purple.
I cry at E.T. all the time.
We all have our weak spots for this. This movie, I felt like I was being pummeled into submission.
Mm-hmm.
Like the movie reminds you every 5 minutes how epic it is, and the John Williams score comes whooshing up, and Janusz Kaminski puts the orange marmalade filter so it looks like the end of Gone with the intermission of Gone with the Wind, and it's just like, this movie did not pause to let me have a genuine reaction to anything.
There's one scene where that happens.
The barbed wire?
The great scene where the British soldier and the German soldier are trying to free the horse from the barbed wire. It's a beautiful scene, and they ruin it with one extra line at the end.
Yes.
When the German soldier's walking away and he goes, "Remarkable horse." It's like, no shit. Of course he's remarkable. That's why they made a movie about it.
I know, and that moment's it's right in that movie Joyeux Noël, where there's about the armistice during Christmas where they all get together. But yeah, I mean, this movie is just it so doesn't seem to trust its material, so it just is constantly underlining and italicizing everything for you, and it just drove me up the wall.
You liked it better than we did.
I kind of liked it. I mean, all right, look, it is super schmaltzy. This is one of the schmaltziest things I think Spielberg has ever done. But you know what? It kind of worked for me. Like, I think that it benefits from having almost no recognizable actors cast in this, except for maybe Emily Watson. You don't really, Benedict Cumberbatch, if you know who he is, but he's in the movie for like 5 minutes. It's really about the horse, right? But it's really about the horse, right? And
the horse is the star. Let's be clear
Joey,
on that.
call him by his name. He's Joey, which is like a really dumb name for a majestic horse. Go ahead.
Is it a goofy movie? Yeah, it kind of is a goofy movie, but it worked for me. I found myself going along with it. that scene where they're cutting the horse, where the German soldier and the British soldier are cutting the horse out of the barbed wire, to me was jaw-dropping.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the best scenes in a Spielberg movie in the last 10 years, if you ask me. I found myself going with the movie, and yes, I did find myself, as I'm watching it, thinking, I'm being totally manipulated here. And I was okay with that.
It's ultimately, it's impossible to argue about this, because either if it works for you, it will work for you all the way, and you will be carried away and moved and stirred and whatever else. And if it doesn't, you are in for 2+ hours of, get me out of here. There's no middle ground on this one.
It's unfortunate you guys are animal haters.
Apparently,
Clearly.
yes.
I have not seen the play. This was originally a children's book that was turned into an acclaimed Tony-winning play
in London and New York,
which supposedly is done with like puppets, like people working with puppets,
four
and it's
people
amazing.
manipulate a horse
Why are you
puppet. It's supposed to be,
laughing?
like,
Because I thought Tony Winning was the name of the director for a second and a half. And I was like, man, I just don't know enough about the theater. And
That's Charlie Sheen's new name.
His porn name. Tony Winning.
If your name was Tony Winning, you have to direct theater,
Yeah,
right? Because think of it on a Tony Winning production.
Be a Tony
I'm
Winning
totally interested, though. I mean, after seeing the trailer and so forth and hearing you guys talk about it, how do you make that? How was that a play?
Right, well, that's
Four
why,
people with a horse puppet. That's how
why
it
it's supposed to be amazing, is because
Yeah.
like they manipulated this thing. It's sort of like skeletal, kind of. It's not like
There's actually a
furry horsey.
Yeah. It's more sort of like stylized, somewhere between like Equus and Julie Taymor. Like there's a documentary that's out on DVD now called Making Warhorse, and it's all about the staging of the London production. If you want to see it, and it's very stylish. It looks cool, and apparently people who've seen it say it's extraordinary.
Well,
but the movie,
and it does at times feel like a kid's book, right? It's very close. I think that this movie and Black Beauty have a lot in common in that it's a story about, that follows a horse as it has different owners. And so there's not really a person. I feel like the plot line of trying to get Joey back with his original owner is a little forced at times.
And here's the thing, though. If you've got like an 8-year-old daughter who's horse crazy, do not take her to this movie. Because it's got like Battlefield, like Saving Private Ryan level stuff going
and stuff
on.
happens to that horse and to other horses.
Yeah. So it's like,
it is a weird
it is like a
story.
kid's movie, but it's not a kid's movie because it gets really dark.
It is a very
and
weird
brutal.
story in that they've done this movie about a horse in World War I and turned it into this, major epic production. And on paper, you'd think, why on God's green earth would anyone do this, right? Because it's from Tony Winning.
Right. Well, you know what? Spielberg saw the play, and he
Right.
was so moved by it. He was like, I have to make this movie.
Right,
So,
and that makes sense. And I'm not sure that it necessarily, it's probably not the best material to turn into a movie. I think that probably he's done as well as anyone could possibly do with that material to turn it into a film.
And it's adapted by two really terrific writers, Lee Hall, who did Billy Elliot, and Richard Curtis, the guy who did Love Actually and Four Weddings and a Funeral and Notting Hill. And you don't sense either of these guys like the wit or the sort of cleverness that they would usually bring to this kind of script.
But what do you want, Bill Nye singing dirty Christmas songs?
No, but it just feels like it's just been beaten into this sort of generic, like uplifting thing. I like to think that the two of them will later collaborate on a very darkly funny satire about the experience of writing this movie.
It sounds like it didn't quite know what it was, something that we say a lot. I think
it knows exactly what it is, but it just delivers it in such a way that you either go for it or you are actively turned off by it.
I'd say that this movie probably suffers in somewhat the same way that we talked about Carnage does. Some plays, some theater productions don't necessarily make great movies. They're not a natural fit. And in a weird sort of way, that's what's happened here. Even if it's an epic production, it doesn't necessarily make it. I mean, I still kind of went with it, but I will acknowledge that there's gaping holes in this production.
Is the madness of World War I accurately portrayed?
I mean, it's Spielberg, so it's reliably visceral and well staged, but it's kind of sanitized because it is PG-13. So this is not going to be the kind of like Carnage.
That's really what I meant by stuck in the middle somewhere, that it couldn't, it either needed to be a real war movie or,
It's not a real war movie.
Yeah. Okay, your numbers.
4.
4, you're up.
4.8.
7. Still works for me.
And a half.
7.5.
Just saying. You can't change it. It's written down in ink. 5.4 is the recommendation here for Warhorse.
But Rotten Tomato World is doing.
Oh yeah, right. What's
It's about 70. About 70.
You might like it.
You might.
Right. If you have
A heart.
No, it's a Spielberg. It's very case by case.
But it is one of those things. Like if you're a horse, even just not a girl, like a young girl, if you love horses, like that, the most compelling scene in the movie is going to be really hard to watch when that horse is wrapped up in barbed wire.
There's horse brutality.
Exactly.
Staged, fake horse brutality.
War horses hell.
Bye.